Pachycephalosaurus is the most recent addition to the Evrima branch, increasing the roster up to 9 playable characters. Its arrival also brought Fracture, an improved version of Bone Break, a mechanic present in Legacy and highly requested by the community. Pachy itself is also a much better version of its older counterpart, having unique mechanics that specializes it into a specific playstyle. This small herbivore was released 400 days ago, meaning that the game doesn't receive a new dinosaur for over a year, and the community is very well aware of that. For many months, a lot of players have been publicly criticizing the lack of playables in Evrima, a feeling that worsens with the constant teases of multiple new dinosaurs that are still to be implemented ever since the first Evrima trailer came out. Afterthought has already stated several explanations for the significant lack of dino releases, expressing that the fundamental mechanics such as nesting and gore must be prioritized so in the future it would be easier and faster to implement new playables, on a development standpoint at least. Although that still doesn't explain the reason why the constant sneak peeks of something that they are fully aware it won't be coming for at least the following 12 months, as well as some questionable comments made by some of the devs. But that's a matter for another video. For now, let's ignore all of that and instead ask ourselves why. Why are new dinosaurs important to us to begin with? Are they really that crucial for the game, or is this just a mere symptom of a much larger problem? Let's begin by first understanding what new dinos offer us in the first place. Playable characters are a gateway which allow players to interact with the game directly on a constant basis. They are a tool, a portal from which we can enjoy the world around us. Depending on the genre in question, we get the chance of choosing multiple characters instead of a single one. That collection of individuals is nominated as rosters, pretty basic stuff. Whenever this is the case, however, each option must have some intrinsic value to positively contribute to said collection. It needs to be unique in some tangible way, otherwise what would be the point of having them if they appear and function the same? Unit distinction is composed of multiple layers. The more layers the devs implement, the more distinct and complex the character becomes. There are two main types of layers that the character is composed of: mechanical and aesthetic. Both are equally important in different ways, and both are required for the well implementation of a playable. Let's start with the former. Mechanical individualization distinguishes a unit in a way that affects how players interact with the game. This very often translates to the creation of multiple playstyles and niches, of which every single one is attached to a singular character. By doing so, the developers have the opportunity to add many ways of play, with the additional benefit of making each member of their roster unique on a mechanical level. Aesthetic individualization, though, is the same concept but on a visual perspective. In a game, it is important for players to be able to distinguish characters apart quickly and efficiently. The use of unique silhouettes is an old and yet very effective method to do so, providing each player with a distinct and easily recognizable silhouette that can be identified in most situations, even in visual impeding environments like fog or low light areas. Designers quickly realized that they could enhance this aspect further. Much like how different mechanics are attached to different characters, developers can also attach unique aesthetics and themes that could improve a specific playable not only on how he is visually represented, but also how the unit itself is perceived by the community. The use of colors and shapes, animations, the use of cultural themes in their design, all of that can be used simultaneously to create not just a character, but also a personality, or a representation of a playstyle. Of course, depending on the game's settings, creativity might be more restrictive in some titles than others. In the case of The Isle, for example, the roster is composed of dinosaurs, prehistoric creatures dead for millions of years, never seen by humanity. When it comes to this specific theme, developers can engage with it in two ways, either making them as accurate as possible, or by making the devs' own interpretation of those species. The latter allows the use of a much wider spectrum of design choices, going from pop culture perspectives of those animals to complete fantasy. Picking either option is equally valid. Different styles appeal to different demographics, so the most important aspect when it comes to it is design consistency. Aesthetics are extremely important in this genre, significantly more so. Dinosaurs are the main reason why the vast majority of the community played the game in the first place. People want to play as one of these extinct animals, not so much for their unique playstyle or gimmicks, albeit that greatly enhances its gameplay experience, but for them being dinos. Obviously, mechanical depth is important for the game's health, but for most of us, the main appeal of this genre is to be able to live in a world where we try to survive and thrive as an animal long gone. As of right now, Evrima has 9 characters, an extremely small number, especially compared to its competition and also to the full roster the isle itself is planning on having. Although that isn't to say that small rosters are a negative, far from it. Fewer characters means less work, less balancing issues, and more opportunities to make each one more complex. However, in the isle, the selection of dinosaurs is not balanced for this small number. There are too many small tiers, very little mid-tiers, no apexes to speak of, and a lot of dinosaur families are still missing. If the current roster was more diverse, a lot of people wouldn't complain all that much for the lack of extra characters, because in that case there would be more mechanical and visual variety even within that small roster. New dinosaur releases are also a form of content in and of itself, shocker I know. Knowing that each one has its own unique feature or gimmick, adding a new member to the roster not only increases the different ways players can interact with the entire game, but most importantly, increases the different ways players can interact with each other, which is crucial in the isle due to its extremely high reliance on server population. This last part specifically is closely attached to the concept of ecosystems in the game, a topic that I already made a video about a while ago. While there is an actual ecosystem in these types of games, it does not necessarily function the same as in real life. In nature, flora and fauna live in a delicate but perfect balance, interacting with each other in different ways and having multiple functions and activities without affecting the stability of the biosphere in question. In games that simulate nature like the Isle though, things are not as one-to-one. There is some sort of ecosystem, but the way it works and the purpose it serves are not the same. Its function is actually based around placing challenges on players. Let me explain. In comparison to real life, in the Isle, the world doesn't have any balance to maintain. Plants don't grow or decay, there are no diseases. The world is static, with players being the only aspect that constantly changes. In this state, carnivores and herbivores don't require or are even able to perform tasks that they would in nature outside of just surviving and reproduce. Instead, the balance and stability that I mentioned previously is targeted around the interactions the different species have with each other and their impact. Essentially, the game's ecosystem is about how stable each dinosaur is in comparison to others. If a carnivore is overly efficient at killing a type of dinosaur, that affects the ecosystem as a whole. Of course, there are many other variables than just combat, but this was just a small example. So, to summarize all that has been said so far, dinosaur releases add different playstyles to fit numerous niches, visual variety that also helps the roleplay aspect of the game, replayability by creating more interactions between playables, extra content, this one is obvious but I had to put it in there, and it also enhances and deepens the player's ecosystem. These are very important aspects that are improved with each edition of one of these prehistoric animals, and sometimes it seems that their importance is not as clear as it should. Are dinos more important than mechanics? Not necessarily. Both are very important of course, but the game's features are usually more complex than a single character, and more often than not, that same system is utilized by the entire roster, like nesting, gore, and skin customization. Should they be completely ignored as they have been for the last 13 months? No. Yes, the dinosaur would have to be touched again once the gore system would be implemented, but the benefits of adding as few as 1 or 2 dinosaurs last year would significantly improve Evrima's gameplay experience. It wouldn't make all the difference in the world, but it would make it much better nonetheless. Besides, if you really think about it, this justification for dino scarcity doesn't make much sense. Gore, nesting, bleed and all that is indeed shared with every dinosaur, but so are many of the upcoming dinosaur-related mechanics. Dilo's Troodon's and Megalinia's venom, Mono's mucus, Para's sonic roar, Elo's grapple, Gally's sand throwing. All these gimmicks may be performed by a single animal, but their effects are shared with the entire roster. Whenever Elo comes out, the devs will have to add extra animations to most, if not all current dinosaurs anyway. The same thing with Para's mechanics and Mono's. Adding features and content to the current roster is something that will never stop. In one way or another, Afterthought will have to mess with old dinos so new ones can interact with them properly. So that raises the question, why delay them for so long? Ceratosaurus is the main predator that is described as a necrophagus. It can eat anything regardless of how rotten it is, so why not adding it alongside Gore in Update 6? You literally explain what Sarah does in your trailer, not to mention the dedicated teaser for it 8 months ago, which for some reason you were surprised that people were expecting it to release soon after? Anyway, I'm getting off track here. Yes, core game mechanics are essential for the game to function and should be prioritized over everything else, but that doesn't mean that other features like dinosaurs should be ignored for a long period of time, let alone more than an entire year. New characters are extremely important for this genre, and hopefully my video managed to accurately explain the reasons why they are. Thank you for watching. A huge thank you to my Patreon supporters for supporting the channel and the content I create. If you wanna join the ranks, the link will be in the description. Don't forget to leave your thoughts and opinions down below, join our Discord server for memes and Paleo Nerd stuff, and I hope to see you next week.